There can be tremendous water impacts. Everywhere the drilling is done, there are impacts on water, either from surface spills of liquids, of chemicals, which are tons and tons and tons are moved around, or after, even just in the initial drilling, there's impacts on the aquifers. The initial drilling is into the raw earth. There is no casing, there is no protection, quote unquote, in the initial drilling. Even when they do put the casing is a highly technical cement that often cracks and fails, and it's only an inch thick. How strong can it be? The pressures used are enormous. They're 10 to 15 times the pressure at the surface. 15,000 pounds per square inch. This is huge. And what happens is that the materials move through, as you saw in that diagram, through natural faults and fractures and the induced faults and fractures. I know these are kind of technical terms, but when you go through a highway cut on the highway and you see the rocks and you see the splits and the openings in the rocks, those are faults, and fractures are natural movements. And what happens is that those things go all the way down. These are the oldest mountains in the world where we live. And we get our water. The water moves, even if it comes to the reservoir and then comes to the tunnels, etc. It is moving through fractured bedrock aquifers. We are all connected. The earth moves. There is no separation between the places where they're doing this and the impacts on the water. Stuff you spill on the surface goes into the aquifers, and then it can move. It can move into New York City's reservoirs. Once it's in the reservoirs, once it's in the water, it can move very long distances. The GE PCB business started 200 miles up the Hudson River. The whole Hudson River, all 200 miles of it, is considered a Superfund site at this time. Do you want your water to be similar? I don't think so.
I just want to interject when we're talking about water here. One of the terms that was used, which you'll hear a lot around discussions of fracking, is endocrine disruptors. That the chemicals are carcinogens, they're endocrine disruptors. That's kind of a fancy scientific name. What does it mean? It means something that's a heavy-duty toxin that gums up the works. If it were equivalent to a piece of gum, and you chewed it, and it was sticky, and you put it on like a toy railroad track, when that car went over it, it would go bump. But if you take that same gum and you put it inside the engine, it's basically gumming up all of the regulatory mechanisms of the human body. It can do that at a very low concentration, like at a drop per billion, at 1 part per billion. It means your hormones, your neurology. I'm a health reporter. It means your DNA, the DNA of your children. We are all of the illnesses that we have, cancer, spectrum disorders, neurological illnesses, they're all on the rise, and we're not looking at the causes. And the effect, that what we do know from very recent science, and the science on this has been very inadequate, is that the effect of these chemicals is not 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. It's more like 1 plus 1 equals 10. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 30. It's not an additive effect. It is a synergistic negative effect. We don't have the science that studies and tracks this yet. This is a human health experiment. So, and that's the chemicals we're talking about.
Right, and these chemicals are in the air and will move through the air. They're in the water, and then they will also get in your food. Your food is not grown in New York City. Your food is grown in the surrounding areas. And if you don't have a clean place to grow food, you don't have clean food. Right now, there are farmers, organic farmers, who have to test their water every month because they're in a place where there is drilling. Now, does this make farming any easier? I don't think so. And then there are places that have been completely eliminated as sources of food and clean food, and this is not good. And then also there's the global impact, the emissions released in the drilling, the venting, the flaring, the pipelines, the compressor stations, and all the different aspects of it. When you add all that up, it's a tremendous global impact, because methane has 100 times in the short term, 100 times the effect of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this is not good. This is why you have all these storms happening, you have disruptions of weather, and you also have disruptions of the growing season for food. Now, how can you produce food if there's frosts in May, and then there's tornadoes, and on and on and on? And these disruptors that Allison is talking about are carried also by the air.
There's another effect that I think hasn't received a lot of focus in general, and that is the potential for political water wars between New York City and other areas of the Delaware River Basin. As everybody here I'm sure knows, New York City is famous for the quality of its water. That water comes from the Delaware River Basin, but it comes from the northernmost reach of it, essentially, in the Catskills, the most upstream portion, and it's essentially segregated from all the rest of the water that flows downstream to New Jersey and Philadelphia and beyond. And so the Delaware River Basin Commission was formed in part as a way, in fact primarily as a way, to prevent